Parthians ruled the Iranian plateau for over 500 years, engaging in many conflicts with the Romans. One significant battle occurred during Osroes I's reign when Roman Emperor Trajan invaded Iran but had to retreat due to a massive earthquake in Syria, which caused heavy losses for his forces, including his own injury. After Trajan's death, a period of relative peace followed, but when Vologases II died in 149 AD, his successor Vologases III sought war with the Romans, resulting in substantial Parthian defeats. However, in 211 AD, the Parthians achieved victory in another major conflict against Rome, ending nearly 700 years of warfare. Osroes I, the son of Vologases I, ascended the Parthian throne during one of the most challenging periods in history, becoming the king of the Parthians in the year 100 AD. At that time, conditions were very favorable for controlling Armenia. Osroes appointed his son as the king of Armenia because the Roman government could not create any trouble in the eastern regions. Rome was engaged in a conflict with the Romanian region at that time, leaving no opportunity for them to send troops eastward. In 114 AD, Rome was no longer occupied with the Romanian War. They decided to move eastward toward Iranian territory, with their first target, as usual, being Armenia. However, Rome was wary of confronting the Iranian army, knowing that in previous years, they had fought Iran several times and suffered significant defeats. This is why ancient Roman inscriptions mention Iran, particularly the Parthian Empire, with respect. The Roman leaders decided to negotiate with Iran before any war or conflict. Despite all this, there was one person who had no patience for negotiations: Trajan, the Roman Caesar. Trajan rejected the gifts from Osroes, the king of Iran, and began mobilizing his army to invade the eastern regions. In his first move in 114 AD, Trajan set off for Armenia and brought all the cities of Asia Minor under his command. The king of Armenia was deposed by the Roman Caesar. Trajan announced that the king of Armenia had to be of Roman descent, thus bringing Armenia under Roman control. A short while later, the king of Armenia was killed on Trajan's orders. Despite all this, Osroes did not react. Seeing no response from Iran, Trajan occupied the entire Armenian territory and officially declared that Armenia was part of the Roman Empire. However, this wasn't the end for the ambitious Roman Caesar. He continued his eastward advance, with his policy being to start with negotiation and friendship, but if that failed, he would bring the region under control by force. Trajan went on to conquer the entire Caucasus region and parts of Mesopotamia. Trajan's nickname in history is Conqueror of the Parthians, reflecting his remarkable victories against the Parthians. In the winter season, Trajan and his massive army moved to the Syrian region to escape the cold. However, due to a stroke of bad luck for the Romans, and good luck for the Iranians, a natural disaster turned the tide against the Romans. A massive earthquake struck Syria, unlike anything recorded in history, causing a significant portion of Trajan's army and his commanders to perish, and even injuring Trajan himself. Despite this natural disaster, Trajan was undeterred and ordered the construction of warships to invade the city of Ardeaben by sea. Meanwhile, in Iran, internal conflicts were so intense that the Parthian king had no opportunity to defend the country's borders. The Romans annexed the cities of Nineveh, Erbil, and Gaugamela into the Roman Empire. The city of Hotrar, whose ruins are located in southwest Mosul today, was only a few miles away from the Parthian capital, Ctesiphon. This city was besieged and fell to the Romans without any significant resistance. Subsequently, Babylon was also occupied without bloodshed. The Romans were now just one step away from the Parthian capital, Ctesiphon. Osroes, unable to withstand further resistance, fled to Susa with his family. With Osroes' escape, the Romans took control of Ctesiphon, and the Parthian capital fell into Trajan's hands. The Romans managed to capture Osroes' daughter as a slave, and during their looting, they also seized the golden throne of the Parthian king. Trajan was exhilarated by these victories and considered himself the conqueror of Iran, but this period of euphoria didn't last long. Osroes retreated to eastern Iran, where he formed an army and then attacked Trajan's forces. Meanwhile, rebellions also erupted in Babylon and Seleucia against the Romans, resulting in Roman defeats. Trajan quickly changed his strategy. In order to maintain his influence in the region, he installed several puppet rulers in the territories under his control, and ultimately had to retreat with all his forces. Trajan's forces went to the city of Hotraa, where most of the inhabitants were Arabs, and the Romans were already aware that they might face resistance from the city's Arabs. This is why, on the order of the Roman Caesar, they constructed strong fortifications around the city to withstand any kind of battle. As predicted, a battle broke out between the Arabs and Trajan's forces. In this battle, the Roman Caesar suffered a severe defeat and had to retreat again. Trajan, who aspired to become a second Alexander the Great, ultimately became a defeated man. This defeat of the Roman Caesar occurred in 116 AD. When Osroes heard about the Roman defeat, he quickly returned to Ctesiphon and liberated Susa and Mesopotamia from the Romans. Meanwhile, in 117 AD, Trajan passed away without achieving his goals. However, Ardiaben and parts of Mesopotamia remained in Roman hands. After Trajan, Hadrian became the Roman emperor. Hadrian changed his strategy, opting for peace and negotiation, and all the Iranian territories occupied by the Romans were returned to Iran. Additionally, a new Iranian king was chosen for Armenia, and a meeting took place between Hadrian and Osroes at the border of the two countries. In 122 AD, a treaty was signed between Rome and the Parthians, and Osroes' daughter, who had been taken captive, was returned to Iran, restoring friendly relations between the two countries. The Romans even promised to return the golden throne of the Parthian king. Following these peace negotiations, in 130 AD, Osroes, the Parthian king, passed away. After Osroes, his son, Vologases II, became the 25th Parthian king. During Vologases II's reign, there was relative peace, with occasional attacks by the Alans from Georgia into Iranian territory, during which they looted the people's belongings. Their king was still Pharasmanes, who we encountered in an earlier article. Vologases II, frustrated with the constant clashes, sent a letter to Rome to complain about the Alans, but he didn't receive any meaningful response. Contrary to Vologases II's expectations, the Roman government treated Pharasmanes with favor. Vologases II, adopting a Western approach, paid the Alans a sum of money to ensure they would no longer cause trouble for the country. This practice of bribery had been employed by the Romans multiple times to avoid direct warfare and bloodshed with various groups. However, such behavior was not well received in the East, and the Parthian nobles viewed bribery as a sign of weakness. Subsequently, Hadrian was so indifferent toward the Parthian territories and Vologases II that the Parthian king found his behavior disrespectful. In 138 AD, Hadrian passed away, and his son Antoninus Pius succeeded him. Vologases sent an envoy with valuable gifts to Rome to congratulate the new emperor, and at the same time, he requested the return of the golden throne of the Parthian kings, which was in Roman possession. However, the new Roman emperor did not allow the Parthian envoy into the court, refused the gifts, and declined to return the throne. Vologases II was deeply upset by this treatment. However, on the other hand, there had been no war between the two sides for about 10 years. Thus, Vologases II decided to take a conciliatory approach, and he eventually passed away in 149 AD. His son, Vologases III, succeeded him. Vologases III chose to abandon the policy of appeasement toward the Romans and sought revenge. He prepared for war with Rome but waited for the right opportunity to strike. Antoninus noticed these signs and sent a letter to Vologases III, asking him to consider the consequences of war, prompting Vologases III to delay his attack for a while. Western history describes Antoninus as a wise and capable ruler. When Antoninus passed away, the Roman Empire fell into the hands of his two adopted sons, Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus. In 161 AD, Vologases III intended to carry out his war plans. An attack on Roman territory was a high-risk move, and the Parthian forces weren't strong enough, posing the risk of severe defeat. Vologases III used the issue of the Golden Throne of the Parthian kings as a pretext for war. The Parthian forces first attacked Armenia, defeating the Romans and taking control of the territory. The Roman forces moved from the Euphrates towards Iran to counter the Parthians, but this campaign ended in failure, with many Roman casualties. The Parthian forces then advanced into Palestine and Syria. The news of these advances reached the Roman central government, leading the Romans to mobilize all their forces in the eastern regions. In 162 AD, Lucius Verus negotiated with the Parthians in Syria, attempting to resolve the conflict through dialogue and peace, but the Parthians refused, escalating the war to a new level. Lucius Verus went to Antioch and sent experienced Roman commanders to the battlefield. In 163 AD, the tide of the war turned, and it was the Parthians' turn to face defeats. Near Syria, the Parthians were defeated, and Vologases III retreated to the east of the Euphrates. In the battle for Armenia, the Romans emerged victorious, and Armenia was once again annexed into the Roman Empire. A Roman commander named Avidius Cassius became a nightmare for the Iranians, winning every battle. Cassius was highly ambitious and even killed the Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius, in his quest for power. Following this, Cassius expelled all Iranians from Syrian territory and then ordered an attack on Iranian soil. At this time, Cassius had earned the rank of generalissimo, and now it was the Romans' turn to advance. They captured the cities of Seleucia and Babylon, and in the next step, the Parthian capital, Ctesiphon, fell once again to the Romans. Under Cassius's orders, Vologases' summer palace was razed to the ground, and all the temples were destroyed. The Parthian Empire, completely defeated, was on the verge of collapse. But, incredibly, another natural disaster came to the Parthians' aid. The plague broke out in Babylon and spread to the Roman army, with many Roman soldiers and commanders dying daily due to this illness. This plague halted the Roman advance into Iranian territory and forced them to retreat. Despite their retreat, the plague followed the Romans wherever they went, claiming many lives. This disease plagued the Roman Empire until 165 AD, leading to a significant number of Roman citizens losing their lives. After these events, Vologases III no longer had a strong army and took no action against the Romans. The Parthian king passed away in 191 AD. After Vologases III, his son Vologases IV came to power. In 192 AD, the Roman Empire also faced some instability. The Roman Caesar, Commodus, was assassinated, and then Pertinax ascended the throne. He intended to carry out extensive reforms in Rome, but after 3 months, he too was killed. 3 prominent Roman generals decided to each govern a different part of Roman territory. One of these generals was Septimius Severus. This general brought all the claimants in Rome to their knees and then set his sights on the Parthian territories. In 197 AD, After ending the civil war and suppressing the rebels, Severus invaded Iran. He was able to take control of Syria and drive the Parthians out of the region. In his next campaign, he moved into Armenia, where the king of Armenia accepted Severus's authority without a fight. Thus, no battle took place. During this period, Vologases IV showed considerable weakness. Because of these shortcomings, more Mesopotamian cities began to lean toward the Romans. With the help of the Mesopotamian forces, Septimius Severus was able to capture Babylon and Seleucia. The Romans committed atrocities in these regions, resorting to violence, rape, and the destruction of fortresses. After some time, famine struck these areas, leading Severus to decide to return to Rome. In the Roman Empire, internal revolts would occasionally occur, all of which were suppressed by Severus. Meanwhile, the Romans still had not been able to capture the Arabic-speaking city of Hotrar. Under Severus's command, they launched another attack on Hotrar, but the Romans were defeated again, and Severus never got his hands on the city's valuable treasures. However, the situation for the Parthians was worse than for the Romans. Despite the Romans' retreat, there was no sign of Parthian forces, and even in Iran, local conflicts and internal disputes had escalated. Severus attacked Hotrar once more, but once again, to everyone's surprise, the Romans were defeated. These defeats weakened the Roman army. After this failure, the Romans did not launch any further campaigns into Mesopotamia, settling for their influence in the surrounding areas. In 211 AD, Severus died, and his son Caracalla succeeded him. Vologases IV ruled for 10 years after the end of the war with the Romans and eventually died in 209 AD. After him, Artabanus V and Vologases V jointly became kings of the Parthians. According to historians, Artabanus V governed western Iran, and Vologases V governed eastern Iran, essentially dividing the country between the two brothers. These two brothers frequently clashed over power, which delighted the Romans. Caracalla was a corrupt ruler with aspirations for Parthian territory. He made several attempts to invade Armenia but failed. Caracalla sent a letter to Artabanus, asking for permission to marry an Iranian princess. He suggested that both countries could unite into a single empire and rule the entire world. Artabanus was surprised by this letter. He knew that the Roman emperor never had the Parthians' best interests at heart, so there had to be some kind of plot. Artabanus V delayed his response to Caracalla's letter. The content of his reply was as follows: "I do not think the proposal made by the Roman emperor will bring joy to the couple, as they do not speak the same language, and their morals, customs, and lifestyle are foreign to each other. Besides, among the Roman nobility, there are many beautiful women for the Roman emperor to marry. Furthermore, the Parthian kings give their daughters to those whose bloodline aligns with theirs and is not tainted." This letter deeply angered the emperor. He felt humiliated by the Iranian king, using it as a pretext to launch an attack on Iran. The Roman invasion of Iran began, and they quickly captured the cities of Erbil, Ardiaben, and Seleucia, then advanced toward Ctesiphon. The battle for Ctesiphon was intense and grueling, but the Romans ultimately emerged victorious. Artabanus, unable to resist, was forced to retreat to the east, but this was not the end of the story. Artabanus was not a man to accept defeat. He waited for a few years, gathered an army, and in the cold winter of 216 AD, launched a counterattack. In this counterattack, the Roman forces suffered a significant defeat, and Ctesiphon was reclaimed by the Parthians, with the other occupied cities also liberated. Most importantly, the Roman Emperor Caracalla was killed by Iranian soldiers. After Caracalla, a man named Macrinus became the Roman Emperor. Macrinus decided to negotiate with the Iranians, hoping to avoid further conflict, but the negotiations led nowhere, as Artabanus rejected all the Roman conditions. To end the war, Artabanus presented 3 conditions to the Romans. First, all Iranian prisoners should be released. Second, the cities that Caracalla had destroyed should be rebuilt. Third, the Romans must pay compensation for destroying Parthian cemeteries. Macrinus did not accept these conditions, leading to the continuation of the war. This time, a battle between Iran and Rome took place in the city of Mardin in modern-day Turkey. This battle was the final confrontation between the Parthian Empire and the Romans. The Parthian forces, led by Artabanus V, attacked the Roman camp with an army of spearmen, camel riders, and cavalry. The Parthians inflicted such a crushing defeat on the Romans that it became one of the most bitter losses in Roman history. During this defeat, all Iranian prisoners were freed, and everything the Romans had plundered from the Parthians over the years was reclaimed by the Parthians. Macrinus knelt before the Parthian king and accepted defeat. The Romans paid 50 Roman denarii as compensation to Iran, marking the end of the conflicts between Iran and Rome, often referred to in history as the 700-year wars, with an Iranian victory. No borders were changed, and the Romans lost most of the battles, with ancient inscriptions often depicting the Parthian Empire as a respected adversary. After this victory, Artabanus could have easily advanced into Roman territory, but since Iran was still dealing with internal strife, he chose not to proceed. During this period, uprisings in southwest Iran, particularly in the Fars region, led by Ardashir Babakan, were gaining momentum. Eventually, between 220 and 226 AD, Ardashir declared Fars an independent state, leaving Artabanus V with no choice but to engage in war with him. This internal conflict was even more challenging than the wars with the Romans, ultimately leading to Artabanus's defeat and his death somewhere between Baybahan and Shushtar. Although Parthian princes announced that the empire had not fallen and they would fight against Ardashir, the Zoroastrian Magi called for a widespread uprising, leading to the eventual collapse of the Parthian Empire after nearly 500 years. But why did such a large and widespread rebellion against the Parthians occur? According to history, Ardashir I himself was a Zoroastrian priest and had considerable support from other Zoroastrian magi. The Sassanian ruler saw the opportunity and started the rebellion. The Parthians were generally not a religious government and did not allow the Zoroastrian magi to interfere in state affairs. However, it's also worth mentioning that the Parthians were not anti-religion, respecting all faiths. Nonetheless, Ardashir, with the support of the Zoroastrian clergy, seized the chance to establish the Sassanian Empire, leading to the end of the Parthian dynasty. On the other hand, the Zoroastrian Magi regarded Zoroastrianism as the official religion of the Iranian people and felt that their religion was under threat during this period. Most of the Iranian people were Zoroastrians, and they believed that the Parthian approach endangered their faith. As a result, they supported Ardashir Babakan's uprising, leading to the eventual fall of the Parthian dynasty in an internal rebellion, despite having resisted the Romans for 5 centuries. The Parthian Empire was the longest reigning monarchy in Iranian history. Throughout their 500-year rule, they made significant cultural contributions that were unparalleled in Iranian history. Figures like Mithridates the Great and General Suvarnar were among the most respected individuals in this royal lineage. The repeated defeats suffered by the Romans at the hands of the Parthians, thanks to their bravery, will never be forgotten in the collective memory of the Iranian people. The Mahestan Council, which represented a consultation among the nobles, is a legacy of the Parthian Empire. If you enjoyed this video, do not forget to like it, and share it with your friends. Do not hesitate to provide your view regarding this video by putting your comments below. Your comments would help us to improve our work, and also, they help us to take your views into account for the future topics that we select. Furthermore, you can subscribe to our channel to become aware of our new videos.